迎继续回到2019炉石战至 HCT 世界总决赛第2天赛程的现场，我是主持人安娜丽。Welcome back to 2019 HCT World Championship. I am the host of the day, Anna Lee. 刚刚呢，我们已经看到了一场呢攻防非常巧妙，但厮杀非常激烈的比赛之后，继续要看到的是我们号称地狱组的 C 组的比赛。那这一场比赛呢，将会是由 Hunterace 对上 justsaiyan， 一位呢是美国第1人，另外一位呢是我们全球积分第1的选手，但是2位都是3星大师。现在呢就要进行这个正面的对决，正面的碰撞，究竟呢谁会技高一筹，抢先呢从 C 组胜出，进入到我们的8强呢？哇，结果真的看起来非常的难预测，所以也请大家千万不要错过喽。Next match is going to be Hunterace versus justsaiyan. Okay, gentlemen, please shake your hands. Please come to the center. Okay, good luck. Please take a seat.
I don't really feel like I have too much of a target at my back. It's like hard to know, right? Because I don't think that any of the players like specifically tried to like counter what I was most likely to bring, or they didn't end up doing that at least, which I think was pretty convenient for me. Like, I'm pretty happy with how my lineup turned out and how my group is. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot as long as I manage to play well. I mean, there's a lot of variables into that, but I think I'm in a pretty good good position, like due to my lineup and how like the lineup turned out versus my group. So it'll depend a bit how like the day goes and stuff, but I feel that if I'm able to like perform at my best level, I should have a really good shot at making through groups. And then from that point on, we will kind of like see how the bracket lines up. I had some of these tournaments like last year also, but this one was like way more intense since there's like a lot more relevancy to it. I think that all of the players were pretty stressed out because also like the meta game, Warrior and Rogue are like 2 power classes. When we play in the Conquest format and we have to bring 4 decks everyone, it becomes like a way different problem to tackle. And it was pretty difficult to like try to figure out like what type of directions other people would go, knowing that probably everyone knows that Rogue and Warrior is going to be like the 2 most likely classes, and one of them is probably going to get banned and one of them is probably going to get hedged towards. The first thing I buy if I win the World Championship will be ice cream. I like pistachio and vanilla. I don't make it too complicated.
My name is David Shan, and my in-game name is justsaiyan, and I now play for Radiance. Yeah, so like this past year, all the tour stops that we went to were amazing. Hit a lot of these amazing places in Europe, South Korea, etc. And you know, winning was amazing, being there. But at the same time, when you lost, you had a good place to visit, plenty of awesome tourist attractions. So it was kind of a win-win no matter where we went. We're definitely putting up a good showing at Worlds, I think. America sent the most representatives, and I'm pretty confident in all my fellow NA players as well. So I think we have a good shot at taking it this year. Definitely that 3-star master thing. It's a lot of pressure, but I think going into this Worlds, everyone has something that, or someone that they're fighting for, because there's a lot of people who are here not just to compete for Worlds, they're here to compete for other players who have a chance to make it to Grandmasters and things like that. So looking at the scheme of things, I think there's plenty of people with more pressure on their back than me. I can kind of just focus on winning, whereas other people who have you know, their career that they're fighting for throughout the next year and things like that. Yeah, so Muzzy and I have been teammates for a while now, and a lot of our 2018 was basically just like spent together. If I play against Muzzy, that means we've both made it out of groups, and at the same time, we've also made it to portions where opposite sides of the bracket meet. So that means like semifinals, finals, and I think we'd both be very happy if we got to that stage and ended up facing each other. I think that's perfectly fine.
among an incredibly stacked tournament. We're about to have an incredibly stacked match here as it's Just Saiyan versus Hunterace, arguably the best of the Americas region versus the best of the European region. What do you think about this one, Sol?
Yeah, certainly in terms of performance this year, I think you'd have to put them on that pedestal. Of course, Just Saiyan has had the incredible win streak that was discussed in an earlier series by TJ and Admirable. Hunterace, of course, the global points leader, as well as perhaps just the most dominant player in everything outside of actual HCT championships, where he's admittedly underperformed. So seeing these two players clash in the Battle of Regions is incredible. Seeing it happen just in the group stage is just testimony to the quality of the players that are here in general. And also, it's a fairly evenly matched one across the deck lists as well.
Yeah, and I think if the previous two matches are anything to go by for today, we've got another crazy one on as the Control Warriors are banned out. So there are some similarities, Rogue being involved in there, and I'll say control shaman for both players, but there are some pretty big differences in these builds between Hunterace and Saiyan. I feel like this is the deck that's going to stick out the most.
Yes, very possible. And I think if we will be unlikely to see a repeat of that matchup, that incredible matchup we saw between Just Saiyan and A8 earlier, where it kind of just grinded out to nothingness. The reason that happened is that A8's deck is kind of light as far as Shaman decks go in this tournament, and Just Saiyan's, although it is a very slow controlling version, is kind of light on a win condition. Hunterace doesn't have that problem. He has the Shudder Walk in there, which can really just blow the game out if it's drawn late in the game with all of these big battle cries loaded up in there. So because of that, if the game stalemates out to that point that we saw, which is quite likely to do, you'd have to give a bigger edge potentially to Hunterace, even than A8 was able to achieve with kind of his Bloodlust package that he has in the deck. Outside of that, the differences that we're seeing are the Summoner's Mage, Conjurer's Calling Mage from Hunterace, and the Zoo from Just Saiyan. And I personally don't have a huge amount of faith in Zoo when you're seeing some of the decks that it would have beaten up on like week 1 of ladder, like that Conjurer's Mage, being teched so heavily to beat it, like Hunterace's deck is. On the hot button issue of the Archthief for Farm, Just Saiyan is not playing it. He is playing the package instead, the Microtech controllers plus Sea Giants. So he does have a more streamlined version of the deck, a deck that is more able to consistently curve out and beat up the opponents, not likely to fall trap to what Viper did multiple times in the previous series, which is having a 7-mana card stuck in your hand.
Right, and as we kick off game number 1, a good breakdown of the Mage and the overall matchups there, but it is going to be Hunterace's Mage, which is heavily teched for anti-aggro, versus Just Saiyan's Rogue. And just a note on the Rogue, although most of them are quite aggressive, there are differences. So Saiyan is playing just the pure sort of pirate package, I would say. And not the Thief package. So a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more damage from hand available. But I think most importantly in this matchup, it has a sap in it, which can cause some true problems for Hunterace. The second you go Drake or even Giant into a sap, you lose so much tempo and so much mana, basically over the course of 2 turns, having to replay that. Rogue often just has already pulled ahead and ends the game. And there is a Leroy, there is the green skin, the picks of course, but also double deckhand, double deadly poison, and a single shadow step. So there's a lot of damage that frankly Hunterace at points may not even be able to play around or even come close to.
Yep. Double Book of Spectres opening hand though for Hunterace, and it looks like he's going to rip the triple minion off the first one. He certainly is. He is playing the version without the Power of Creation, which makes it extremely likely when he has Book of Spectres #2 in his hand already that he is going to hit triple minion. One of the reasons why Power of Creation was cut is just to increase the consistency of that card exactly. Book of Spectres in the early game, being able to get you to a turbo Mountain Giant coming down on turn 4 or turn 3 with the coin.
All right, Hunterace currently one...
next card, Conjurer's Calling, 1 off.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the Caligos in the hand as well, it means that this Witch Doctor, and also I think most importantly in this matchup, the Scale Hide is actually live, so it means it will be able to,
Scale Worm.
Oh, Scale Worm, sorry, Scale Hide.
I was checking, I know there's some anti-aggro tech in this deck,
but this is ridiculous.
But hold on a second.
Yeah, sorry, the Scale Worm, because it deals with that power Rogue turn a lot of the time, or at least alleviates some of the pressure that Rogue can put down between the turns 3 and 5 by able to just maybe 1-for-1-ing, but sometimes 2-for-1-ing, whether that be just a dagger charge as well, or a small minion like a Lackey, but still, any little helps when you're trying to get to the late game with this Mage deck.
Sure. Hunterace says it's just going to go again.
It's going to burn, right?
Runs out on me.
Sure is.
Luckily for Hunterace, at least, there are no preps and no backstabs currently available, which means with this Van Cleave and some of the other cards that are there, there's no huge combo turns that are going to come out, because one of the other problems the mage can struggle with is a very early Van Cleave. Because yes, there's a Voodoo Doll in hand, but you can't often play it and ping in the same turn early enough. And then always there is the fear factor of just say a sap. If the Voodoo Doll gets sapped, then you're dead. Like Van Cleave pretty much just kills you. Not bad for the evolve.
We're taking a trip down memory lane with our evolves in our series we've seen so far. We've seen Chillwind Yeti come out, and now we're getting good old Taz Dingo behind it. Very interested in Hunterace's play on the previous turn, though. He did have a couple of options. Fire Tree Witch Doctor perhaps looks like the most vanilla option, despite it floating a mana. He also did have the option to just kind of jam out Voodoo Doll onto the 1/5. The 1/5 can be very irritating. It does threaten a lot of damage over time, and also threatens being bounced for more lackeys in subsequent turns. But the one thing that it does then fall to is exactly Witchy Lackey, which then removes that transform effect away. The play that I honestly didn't really consider was filling up his hand. Filling up his hand with Book of Spectres, because what he was looking for was specifically that Mountain Giant. He already had the Conjurer's Calling in hand, so he was willing to draw 3 cards for the potential of burning 1. Massive odds in his favor that if a Mountain Giant is going to come, it's going to be in one of those first 3 draws and not in the 4th. And then he gets to power out those 2 big 8/8s or 7/8 taunts and try and dominate the board early. And that's quite often a lot for Rogue to deal with.
It is. And it's very, very unfortunate, but he did get the Scare Worm off, and like I said, it kind of 2-for-1s as it killed off the Taz Dingo, and will soak a Dagger Charge. The damage to the Rogue, to Saiyan's face here, isn't really that important, because until Saiyan gets control of this board, there's no real damage going to face anyway.
Yeah, and as soon as Hunterace does get control of the board, you can very often just Alex Straza your opponent and kill them from 30
they often just die,
so it's kind of irrelevant just to hit a few big minions with your face in the early game.
There is a slight wild card element. Well, I say slight, based on what I'm about to talk about, but the deck is kind of a wild card element of this mage because of the way Conjurer's Calling works. But most importantly, just the Fire Tree Witch Doctor can alter games quite dramatically because the deck doesn't play spells, and then suddenly after having to deal with either Frost Novas, Blizzards, and Flame Strikes, or Fireballs, Polymorphs, Frostbolts, any direct damage or removal, it's kind of hard to play around.
Hunterace just tempoing out one of his big anti-aggro cards. The Mind Control tech, I think part of this is just kind of respect given to his opponent, where he says, hey, I don't think my opponent's just going to play into Mind Control tech willy-nilly, so I should just play it out here as a 3/3. It's mana efficient, weaving it in with the ping. Just dumps it on the board, trying to use it to contest.
Looks like Hunterace is just waving for an admin, so I'm sure someone will quickly run over and see what the problem is. But as you can see, Saiyan's not even making a move to play.
Yeah, it looks like we might have some kind of disconnect issue on screen here, but hopefully we can get this resolved.
One of the benefits, our voices aren't actually going out to the stadium, so they're not going to be able to hear us anyway.
I don't think Hunterace speaks Taiwanese.
I don't believe so, but you never know. Maybe he just didn't tell us, which would be a weird thing to just leave out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the secret plays. But yeah, seems to be just some issue that they're dealing with there, so we'll get you an update on that pretty quickly and get back to you. But so far, that game was looking like it was slipping a little bit for Hunterace, but I will say, if you imagine that Mind Control tech was the Hench Clan Sneak, you see the value of that card.
Yeah, with 2 Conjurer's Callings that were slowly getting stranded in his hand. I would add that it wasn't as if Saiyan was running away with the game, and suddenly, a Rabble Bouncer coming down cheaper later on with 2 Conjurer's Callings in his hand. Hunterace was able to make some very big board states very quickly. And the threat of that big Edwin in hand was actually somewhat neutralized as well, because you can use Conjurer's Calling as removal against a huge Edwin. Turn a 10-10, 12-12 Edwin into just 2 small 3-drops and just move on with your life. Sometimes that can be combined with Mind Control tech or Rabble Bouncer as well to be added to your benefit. So Hunterace definitely still had a lot of game going there, but he did shove a lot of chips in on that early gambit of the double Book of Spectres, really fishing hard for that Mountain Giant. Didn't pay out in the end.
Okay, so just to give you an update on what's going on, the game is actually currently paused, believe it or not. The technology is there, apparently. Well, if it's a disconnect, then it freezes, right? Because it's a friendly match, so we can pause. They're just looking into the issue now, but just a little bit of a breakdown as well there for that matchup in general. Do you think Hunterace is actually running enough anti-aggro or too much anti-aggro to deal with something like Rogue? Because it's not just a pure aggro deck, is it? There are enough tricks in the deck that Rogue can go to the late game.
In his mage in particular?
In his mage in particular, just in that matchup.
I think this is one of the best lists of mage that I've seen in this tournament. without, you can kind of throw Roger's list out of that because Roger's list is built for a very singular purpose, and in terms of doing that singular purpose, Roger has the best
Put the big
list
stuff in.
Right, exactly. But with Hunterace saying I'm going to ban Warrior and I want to have a deck that performs well against aggro plus some other random stuff that I might be expecting to see, I think this deck has a really, really good balance. The 2 Rabble Bouncers that are in there, the 2 Mind Control techs. The Henge Clan's Sneak I yet to be fully sold on, but I do like the idea of the early stealth minion, be it on 3 or be it on 4. I'd like one of those being in there, so the fact that Hunterace has that as well is fantastic. And what's also fantastic is 2019 Hearthstone disconnect issues, and we get right back where we started with Hunterace now making that big board swing, and that is about as big as it can get off a 3-drop Conjurer's Calling. Voodoo Doll snipes it himself with the Conjurers. Gets a 4-3 and a 3-4 for his troubles. That's huge.
Yeah, those 3 drops ended up coming out in some very nice shapes there. And we did just miss a tiny bit, as I'm guessing they just presumed as quickly as they could, or resumed, should I say, with the Henge Clan Thug going down with a swing, opening up it to a 4-4. But yeah, we had a quick review there. But yeah, we didn't miss too much. And most importantly, as you said, they can't continue the game they were already playing. Nothing but a few seconds of our time has been lost.
Beautiful. Modern technology at its finest.
Yeah. But now suddenly, with the dramatic power swing of these 3 drops versus the minions that Saiyan currently has on board, you can see that this Waggle pick needs to get a lot of work done.
Hello.
Oh, Fan of Knives, definitely not bad. Would you go as far to say Fan of Knives if it's... Oh no, Fan of Knives... Yeah.
You've devolved into random noises,
Well,
Raven.
I'm thinking... Yeah, I'm thinking if Fan of Knives Eviscerate is too much of an overreaction, but he loses the board if he doesn't Eviscerate or clear something. So, looks like he's going to go halfway there and just get the Van Cleef down and just use the 1-1 to trade in, which is also pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think Saiyan here has a little bit of fear of one of the tech cards I didn't touch on in that little recap there was Mossy Horror, where if he just kind of left, if he just played removal and left a board that was, 2-5, 1-1, 1-5, or whatever it was he ended up with, they were all pretty sure sub 2 attack minions, then your opponent goes, oh, okay, you've spent a bunch of your damage clearing my minions, here's my Mossy Horror for a full board swing. Okay. Saiyan there decided that he wanted to try and develop, and Hunterace this time definitely got the shorter end of the stick that he got the longer end of last time around. Spider Bomb can, of course, be fantastic situationally, but now right here where there's a 2-1 on the board, not really feeling it.
I think most importantly, it does force trades, though.
Sure.
It's not saying can't just, backstab, remove it, and then move on, because he does end up losing a minion. And I was going to say, as an addition to the Mossy Horror you were talking about, I feel like in Mage, that tech card fits the best, because it's a 6-drop that you can Conjurer's Call in afterwards. Yep. So it's a minion that has a very specific role, but you can adapt it to other things as well.
Yeah, any card that has a high impact when you play it, but is kind of understated for its cost, is something that you should consider in this deck.
Voodoo Doll, as we just seen.
Exactly. We saw the power earlier of, I believe it was Hunterace, Mind Control Tech a Tending Tauren away from Ike, and was then able to use Conjurer's Callings on itself. 6 mana, 3-4. Fantastic card. If you could potentially play it in Conjurer's Mage, might get some work done.
It's a fantastic card when you can make your opponent ready.
Yeah, and then just steal it away.
Yeah, and then you use it.
Yeah, when you have full control of the levers like Chucky does, then everything's a fantastic card.
That is very, very true. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Spider Bomb not being super impactful, but it did ensure a board clear, I'll say. However, low impact it maybe is something. And now, though, maybe a rare moment here as Hunterace does have initiative on the board. There is the pick equipped, but there's also just a lot of good cards in Hunterace's hand.
There's also, I'm pretty sure, about to be a board full of 3-drops. No? Yes?
You can still do it. Remove the weapon.
Yeah, right,
the pick's normally the nightmare. Here comes the Conjurer's Calling with Khadgar, and as you said, it's going to be a pretty big board.
His charge minions have +2 attack!
It's harvest time.
I just like the way that voice line was like, but it's harvest time. Funnily enough, though, double 2/4 lifesteals. There could be a lot worse 3-drops to get. And now Saiyan needs to piece together a way to win.
How does this work? I confess, I was so offended by the Warsong Commander change that I never actually used it since. Do you have to play the minion to get the buff? What happens if he Conjurer's Callings into a charge minion? Does it get the buff?
I don't
from the
think
Warsong
it says
Commander?
play. I think it just says your charge minions have +1
attack. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Fantastic observer. Now, my question, and we discussed this in a previous matchup, because I just like going face with Rogue.
So many options.
Does Saiyan actually have to just consider the fact that he may not be able to deal with this board, mainly because the 2/2/4s.
Yeah.
And then just pick. He has Deadly Poison, he's just seen an ooze.
But there are 2/2/4 lifesteals on the board.
You can pump out a lot of damage though. There's Abyss, there's SI, there's Deckhand, and there's the Waggle Pit.
All right, let's see. So you fall this turn. He goes to 15, he goes back up to 19 from the lifesteal. Then next turn you draw Leroy, you have 16.
Wait, he'll go lower because you do Deadly Poison, right?
Oh, sure, okay. And then next time if you draw Leroy, then yeah, okay, sure.
I'm just thinking at this point,
it's an out.
I don't know how he does it.
It's
We can
definitely
see who's number 2 is there for Hunterace. So this could put a lock. He can also... Oh, never mind, no he can't.
There's the sneak.
Yep. This board's going to be full though. Not that it matters, he is healing for an additional 4.
I think Hunterace should consider here whether playing the 7 mana, the Rabble Bouncer for 7 is actually plays around more outs from his opponent. I think that's probably nonsense, but it's worth thinking about. And he should also think about potentially, after attacking, pinging off one of his own minions so he continues to have room for a taunt on the following turn. Although I don't think that's relevant because he just pushes lethal himself over 2 turns anyway.
Also, worst case, are you ready, Sol? If one minion dies now after him playing that, he could Mossy Horror his board, then Conjurer's Con to 6-drop charges for the lethals.
Sick.
I mean, you want some shiny plays.
Yeah.
But now with that second ooze, I think that's just broken the back of Saiyan's potential offense here.
Does seem that way. And you can see the power of, this is kind of what this deck evolved to, right? It was initially this deck was being built with like, well, I just want to play Mountain Giants and then Conjurer's Call it because then I win the game. I drop Khadgar and Conjurer's Call and I get a board full of Mountain Giants and it's incredible. It turns out, if you Khadgar Conjurer's Calling a minion of just about any cost, you win a lot of games of Hearthstone. So lowering that curve to the point where you can fight back against aggro has really improved this deck's win rate across the board, and that's just exactly what you've seen here. You saw it earlier with, I think, Bloodyface using Conjurer's Calling on 2-drops just to fight the board against Zoo. Now you're seeing it being used on Voodoo Dolls and other 3-drops to incredible effect by Hunterace.
It's what I was talking about yesterday when we talked about lackeys, in the current way the game is just being played is that having a lot of minions, even if they're small, is just good right now.
Yeah.
Because no deck really deals with that outside of maybe Warrior, and that's it. So already, look at everything Saiyan's having to do to just try and even up the board state, and he doesn't. And he may just be dead soon, and there's not a lot he can do about it. So Hunterace can actually go Fire Tree Witch Doctor to try and get some form of lethal here. He needs Frostball upwards.
Yeah, I could also go Caligos for the same effect, but Fire Tree Witch Doctor would let him make a defensive play alongside that.
Scale Worm,
Rabble Bouncer. Yep.
What to do? What to do?
I think I like the Witch Doctor a bit more.
Can Warsong Commander at least say your Rush minions have +1 attack?
No.
Your Rush and Charge minions have +1 attack?
No.
Give your minions with less than the 3 or less attack charge?
No.
Please?
No, because that would still be good.
Even the Tavern Brawl, where we get to play these wonderful decks from the past. Well, no, it's because Ostkaka won with nerfed Patron.
Oh,
so
sure. It was right before, wasn't it?
He has Tempo Patron in his world. Like, the most oppressive deck of all time, have to nerf it. Never made it to the World Championship. No.
Stop living in the past, Sol. Oh, interestingly enough, just went for the overall, just more powerful play on board and said, you know what, I want the Rabble Bouncer and the Scale Worm. Beat me now, Rogue.
Yeah, sure, makes sense. Why go fishing for a lethal out when this board state is lethal anyway?
Yeah. No need to make things complicated.
Saiyan just gave a look up, just a glance over the desk at Hunterace. It's like, yeah, all right, I guess you got me.
I give up.
There's the concede from Saiyan. Just decided to give a second just to check over everything, but Hunterace takes the win even with the burn of the Mountain Giant. And there is a reasonable argument, as provided, that you only need Mountain Giants to win that matchup if you're playing that version of the Mage with so many other tools and using Conjurer's Call in just very nicely, I'd say, just to be able to just say, I'm going to go wide. Wait, did Hunterace just dab?
Did he really?
It looked like out of the corner of my eye, because for some reason I was looking at you, Sottle, but it looked like he slightly dabbed. I'm going to choose to believe he just did.
I was also making polite eye contact, so I can neither confirm nor deny, but we'll take Mr. Bagley at his word and say that Hunterace dabbed, because that's just funny.
Especially game one.
Yeah.
I won game one.
But yeah, I do, like, it seems a long time ago because we had that little disconnect in the middle, but I think Hunterace did go fishing for that Mountain Giant plan. And then when he had to bail out of it, he did so very successfully because it turns out it's a very low-risk plan. When he draws all those cards but whiffs on the Mountain Giant, he still has a bunch of other incredible tools that he's built in his deck to be anti-aggro that can get him out of the situation. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, Hunterace takes game at number 1 versus Saiyan. We'll get official confirmation on whether that was a dab or not after this break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
My name is David Shan, in-game Just Saiyan. This has been kind of a big season for me. It started out at the beginning of September with the win in Montreal, and then we went to Oslo and I finished second there.
Just Saiyan taking a 3-0 in basically a mirror lineup.
So maybe like the biggest factor in me taking Hearthstone as seriously as I do now is the beginning of this year, Tempo Storm had signed Muzzy and Amnesiac. I just kind of realized that I don't want to just play this game casually, stream here, compete here, and try and just be okay at everything.
Just Saiyan progresses, and he looks like I feel right now after that game.
I really didn't want to let my teammates down, and I just had to kind of step it up. I'm deeply competitive. In college, I did cycling competitively. High school, I was swimming. It's been kind of just part of my lifestyle. That's just something that I think I bring to the table. Other people see me trying harder, and hopefully that makes it so that they try a little bit harder too.
Wow, 3-0 in double quick time.
I get so many comments when I'm on the road from my mom. I know she's watching because, she's always texting me after the event, like, good job, but remember to work out and lose some weight here and there. It comes with traveling to gain a little bit of extra weight, but I'm happy that they're watching and they're supporting me. So winning here at Fall Championships, making it to the world stage, I'd validate a lot that I've done in Hearthstone. This year has really been about just reaching new heights with my teammates, who have been, the best teammates I've had.
We are back here at the Hearthstone World Championship, and it's Saiyan versus Hunterace. Hunterace currently leading 1-0 with his mage deck grabbing a win, and a deck, or at least archetype, that's been very, very successful so far in the past 2 days.
Yeah, I believe in total a 9-3 game record for that particular mage deck overall in the tournament, not just for Hunterace, obviously having not played that many games with the mage deck. But it goes to show that we've seen some of the decks potentially struggle. In the 4th deck spot, we're seeing Rogue and Warrior being bought a ton, and then we're seeing a lot of Shaman or Hunter, which I would call saying in the 3rd deck spot. Yeah, and then in the 4th deck spot, you're looking at Zoos, Druids, Token Druids, and then the Summoner's Mage as well. And it seems like Summoner's Mage is the go-to pick based on how it's performed so far. Of course, we do have to wait for the long pan out, because it does seem now as we roll into day 2 that the Hunters are starting to find their niche. That matchup that we saw of the Hunter against the Control Warrior seemed incredibly straightforward for the Hunter to be able to take down with Viper's build. And he doesn't even have the greediest possible build that you can have of that deck, where you play like double Rhino and double Dire Frenzy to get the job done. So we might see some of the underperforming decks come back into it as they find the better matchups for themselves. But as of right now, it seems like the Summoner's Mage, with a lot of anti-aggro build being the right way to build it, is performing very, very well.
Yeah, it makes me very happy to be honest. Like, for me, I feel that's the 3rd deck at the moment in terms of the meta, and it's nice because I enjoy the deck a lot. I enjoy playing and casting the deck, and the fact that it's winning means we're going to see more of it.
It's just beautiful absurdity, that deck, isn't it? Like the.
Yeah. But I also think it's very hard to play.
Oh, absolutely. It's very hard to play in the amount of like statistics and probability that you have to memorize to be able to play it optimally is almost prohibitive as a human being to be able to do. But potentially, the impact that those little things have, they don't come up every game, right? Like, just because you know all that stuff does not mean you gain an advantage every game over your opponent. Sometimes just something random happens that no one could have accounted for, and one or the other player just wins. So it's kind of when the weird definition of is a deck hard to play comes into it, because yes, you can search for edges with Mage to a level that you can't do with other decks, but they don't always pay out.
Yeah, 100%. I do enjoy it though, but unfortunately that's going to be it for Hunterace's Mage, as he did grab the win with it, and we're going to go straight into game number 2, and it's going to be the Rogue Mirror. But there are different builds, Sol, in this matchup. Who you like, and who do you even favor here? Because it's quite difficult.
I might be about to annoy some people. Okay, never mind that, because I'm going to annoy some people whichever way I go.
You
with
annoy
this.
some people by being here, Soto.
Annoying people is my superpower, so I will stop trying to avoid it. I prefer the Burgle version in the deck because I think Vendetta is ludicrous in the matchup in terms of the tempo swings that it can create. The problem, of course, comes that Vendetta only gets activated by very limited cards in your deck when you're playing the Rogue Mirror in particular. Right. Henchclan Burglar being Discover a spell from another class, not from your opponent's class. But if you can get Vendetta online, I think it's insane in the matchup, just in terms of, like, you play a 4-3 and kill their 4-3. It's prep sap, it's prep eviscerate. That's essentially what it is in that spot, which is crazy. Yep,
that is very true. And just a side note, because there are just so many builds of every single archetype we have, both players are also playing one sap each, which means that even some players in the Thief version have actually cut sap altogether, whereas Hunterace is not. So he has Vendettas and an
sap,
equal amount of saps.
I think is brilliant. I feel like I've perhaps already praised Hunterace's deck building too much in this series, but again, I love the way his Rogue is built. I do favor the Burgle Rogue, as I just laid out, but I do think you need to potentially play sap in this tournament, because normally the argument is, well, you don't need sap. You have backstab and you have big stab, the Vendetta, right? Like, what would I need to sap when I can do 4 damage for 0 mana? Like, that's ridiculous. Well, Mountain Giants, 7-8 taunts. These are all things that you'd much rather sap than have to go through with damage. So I think finding room in there for the one sap alongside all that makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, and personally, I would even go as far as personal preference, but dropping one fence and going double sap sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Just because I don't think fence is as good. But let's just get into this game now as we start getting to the juicy turns. The little doggo pulled a Henchclan Burglar, was that? Wow, that's a really good pull. That's going to help out with some of these awkward turns, because the Burglar does have the new thief mechanic of actually taking a card not from Rogue.
Yes. And do I recall them saying that they will continue to do the Burgles thing in that style? I think that is a fantastic change for people who... Because I know a lot of people have been fans of this style of deck for a while, right? It's kind of fun. You get to play with your opponent's cards. It was kind of the same thing when that used to be the Priest style.
Right.
Like, it wasn't very good, but people liked doing it. And that's always been the case with Rogue as well, up until now, where it's actually become very powerful.
This is a tough one. I see merit to all three. I'd probably go Frostbolt, Ray of Frost, Solarium in order of rank, first to third.
I think Solarium can be pretty nutty.
My problem with Solarium is it bases you being late game, and sometimes in this matchup you just die, and you might not get to that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a late game play if you want to use it to go fishing for like preps or Edwin, for example. If you start to build up like a handful of spells and you want a Solarium to look for a minion with the big upside being Edwin.
I just feel like Ray of Frost could be
I agree.
Massive.
I don't disagree that both the other cards are good. I'm just objecting to you putting Solarium at the bottom of the list.
Oh, really?
I don't necessarily
What would your order? You rank them then.
I would go Frostbolt, Solarium, Ray of Frost.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, Frostbolt, I think we both agreed was a very good choice, and Hunterace joined us on that one.
Okay. Interesting that this Edwin is not being backstabbed here either, which means that Hunterace is probably committed to using either this Frostbolt or Eviscerate to deal with it. He does have things that want to be combo activated in hand, 2 of them, Raiding Party and the Evil Miscreant, but he's getting to the point of enough mana now where that should be very reasonable. I guess with the Deadly Poison Dagger in play, like backstab on the Edwin to set it up for the trade doesn't work, but he could still backstab it to set it up for Frostbolt Dagger on the following turn.
Which he could end up doing anyway,
Right.
so maybe that's why.
I guess.
Like maybe draw something that completely changes it, like a sap,
Yeah.
maybe.
The only-
and he can do this play anyway, because I don't think Edwin can really gain more health. Right?
Yeah, the only time it's relevant is if the 6/6 trades with the 4/3, which with the Deadly Poison Dagger in play is almost
Very
certainly
unlikely.
not going to happen. There are times in the Rogue Mirror where the players get scared and start protecting their own health totals very aggressively, but yeah, I don't think this was that position.
Not when it's, doesn't take priority over Mr. Van Cleef.
Ooh. It's kind of interesting. Double Goblin, Rush +1.
I think they actually get a bit more work done in this mirror match than most matchups. Because everyone deems this as one of the worst. I actually think with the amount of minion trading that can potentially happen, that this is actually pretty good.
Big decision point for Saiyan. There's a 1/5 on the board, but do you care about a 1/5 when you have 15 damage of Waggle Pick and Leroy Eviscerate in your hand? I think Just Saiyan solves for X and finds the correct answer, and that is a resounding no.
Quick update as well, no weapon removal in either player's deck, but Frostbolt is, kind of. It's a weapon delay, as you can actually use the Frostbolt to go face and say you cannot swing this weapon next turn. And especially if the plan is to set up the pick into bounce, it can still be done with a hero power to break the weapon.
Yes.
But you dodge the 5 extra damage, which is often pretty nice.
Yeah, it also costs a whole lot more mana to do it that way. Like, you can't... One of the proposed names for this deck is Turn 8 Rogue. In the same sense, like old school aggro rogue used to be known as like Turn 6 Rogue or whatever, like that's the turn it killed you. Turn 8 is the turn this deck kills you because it's the turn where Leroy bounce with Waggle Pick, replay Leroy is able to happen. So if you're forcing your opponent to re-dagger in that position as well, then they can get in a serious amount of trouble.
And this is where the game starts getting real spicy.
Yikes.
Because there is a lot of damage from that Deadly Poison and Eviscerate and then Leroy and Shadow Step, but there is a whole turn in between that being possible without the pick, with just the Leroy Shadow Step replay. Wait, would you have a Leroy Shadow Step this turn?
I was thinking about it, yeah. That is kind of a caster vision call because Saiyan is believing that his pick swings here are uninterruptible by Hunterace's deck. Because they are, by Hunterace's deck, you'd have to account for discovered spells to think that you're not going to get this damage through. But seeing the hands, that is the play that gets you lethal the most often, to play Leroy here and Shadow Step it.
I think as well, though, my query would be if you're planning on killing them next turn anyway,
yes,
well, you ain't going to use Shadow Step at all. So,
I choose Zero.
It is a little bit caster vision there. Oh, there is just a quick pause. I believe we've been told that it is a white noise problem in Hunterace's headset. That being that, in case you don't know, we feed white noise into the headsets that are already pretty soundproof, just to block out as much sound as possible.
Yeah.
Slightly different in this venue for specifically these players because we are not on loudspeaker to the crowd because they wouldn't, the majority would not understand us.
Right.
So it's not, they can't hear us now, for example. So, yeah, we're just going to get that fixed and sorted to make sure everything's just smooth runnings, because I don't really know what Hunterace is hearing, whether it's like, patchy white noise or whatever, so it's even worse, I would say, if it's broken. Then white noise is pretty distracting by itself, to be honest.
Yeah, and at the end of it, if he's not comfortable, if he's not happy, he's well
stop.
within his rights to put his hand up and say, hey, please, can we sort this out? And that screen you were looking at, that is the pause to resume feature that you're looking at, so the game will be picked up from that exact spot again. Hopefully. I don't want to curse anything, but
it will.
Yeah.
Ooh, never commit, Saul. Never commit.
But I mean, I really hope so, because that game is on a fine margin. If anything, this feels rigged just to build the suspense of what's about to happen.
Imagine the reconnect screen is actually just an overlay they put up.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, stop playing a sec.
Because we are really balanced on a knife edge here with that Leroy Shadow Step in hand and with Saiyan in the mindset of I just get to swing this Waggle Pick and end the game. But Hunterace has the trump card of Frostbolt, which is not only so incredible to stop the Waggle Pick being used a second time, but also so incredibly useful in that it pushes damage of his own as well alongside that Leroy Jenkins that he has, with Hunterace representing a huge amount of damage on board. And there you see the magic of modern Hearthstone. The Discover is resumed from right where we left off.
We will not make Sottle a liar. We will continue. But most importantly as well, I think on top is, I would love to be in Saiyan's mind right now because he knows there's a card.
Yes.
There is a card that has not been played yet that could be pretty much anything that isn't a rogue card.
Yes.
Which he has to consider. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, oh, he should think it's Frostbolt, but he has to consider something may happen. So there's what, 16 available now?
3, 6, 12,
if you just
15,
threw everything
16,
down?
Yep.
Not that he needs to this turn, but I do think this Frostbolt's coming out no matter what. Because you just don't want stuff to happen with that pick.
Right.
Especially because Hunterace has minions on board, so these minions from Saiyan can be traded off to guarantee like a specific bounce target if he so chooses.
Yes. And Hunterace has a lot of mathematics to do right now because he needs to set up a position for himself where he has assured lethal himself on the following turn while freezing Saiyan's face so the Waggle Pick can't be used, while also playing around probably Leroy plus a card is the range he will play around, like Leroy Abyss, Leroy Backstab, that Leroy Sap, that kind of thing. Regenerate definitely helps getting the job done. So we'll see if Hunterace can achieve all of those three things. I think Leroy plus a card will be the range that he will look to beat.
There's the Frostbolt. And Saiyan's reaction.
So now...
Okay, it's just a machine.
1, 2, 3, 4 in play. He's going to take one out, takes that damage anyway, which seems somewhat irrelevant. But I guess the bounce, yeah, that's fair. So now, yeah, Leroy plus the 3 in play would be 9 plus a card. Eviscerate in this case is 13. South Sea Deckhand is 11. Yeah, I think he's done this perfectly.
And this is very interesting, isn't it? Because you wind back, yes, we have ultimate godlike vision here, but the Leroy Shadow Step earlier could have really helped out this turn as he would have pushed the damage and had a cheap Leroy to just replay once again. There is still Deckhand, Leroy, and Evis, though. Can't all be played this turn before anyone jumps at me. But still.
Double Deckhand as well.
Could he no, it wouldn't matter.
He was so close in so many ways there as well, because he had Deckhand, Shadow Step, Deckhand, which is the same damage as the Eviscerate, and then Re-Dagger to try and bounce the Deckhand as well with all this stuff on board. There was so many ways that he could have tried to get the job done there.
Look at this, Saiyan now going on the defensive because he knows just as much as he nearly killed Hunterace, Hunterace could just nearly kill him too.
And he also knows that he has turn 8 next turn. This is turn 8 Rogue and he's going into turn 8. So this is do or die for Hunterace, and Hunterace gives the shake of the head. That's such an ugly hand because he needs to pay full mana for a Dread Corsair to play his raiding party to get the Waggle Pick, which would make his Dread Corsairs cost 0.
Yes.
That's ugly.
That is about as bad as it gets, I would say, in terms of just the hand composition. So Hunterace there, dropping the raiding party, is getting the dagger equipped. Not the dagger is really meant for much greatness at this point, although it does add up to 10 with the Leroy if he does get attacking with the Corsair. But now what can Saiyan do? Because this Ethereal Lackey as well can make things a little bit spicy.
I think with the Deckhand plus Rush, he's just in business here, right? He just has guaranteed lethal without a bounce. 6 from the Leroy, 7 from the weapon, 1 from the Lackey. He doesn't need to bounce anything, it's just guaranteed lethal. I was going to bring up the idea of whether he could have been defensive on the previous turn without dropping the 1-5 into play, because the 1-5 is very difficult to kill off to then guarantee the bounce that you wanted, but it turns out he just had the pure lethal without the extra bounce of the Leroy needed. That, for me, was my favorite Rogue game that I've seen be played out this week at the World Championships. It turned out to be a Rogue Mirror, which is no great surprise because I think the most interesting Rogue games now are when your opponent's deck is as powerful as yours is, which kind of demands them to be playing the same class, but it's also no disservice to the fact that it's 2 of the very best in the world at playing that deck, and they both played it superbly. There are moments that we question, because there always are. Hearthstone isn't a solved science. That would make it incredibly boring.
Yeah.
But, you know, everything was justifiable. Everything had a consistent rhythm, a consistent game plan. 2 players at the top of their game playing the top deck in the game. That's about as high level a Hearthstone as you can get.
Yeah, and also as well, you know, you're going to have to forgive us a little bit, because with the fact that the way pick works with the Shadow Step effect and then multiple like small minions on the board so often, it is hard to just instantly spot lethals when many different outcomes could happen based on board states. So we'll try and keep up and learn as we go. But it was
Hey, I got it.
Eventually.
Don't tar me with your brush.
Eventually is all I'm going to say.
Come
but
on.
the series has been evened up 1-1. Hunterace and Saiyan are going to continue to battle it out to find a winner. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Now the cards show me a tinker, so clever, but kind of a stinker. In a storm that's a raging, sits the last one I'm paging, a truly unusual thinker. All bots are now gonna go boom, but still, you shouldn't assume that I've made this selection on my own direction.
No, indeed, let's be clear. I have brought you all here, and now you're all in. It is time to begin.
Well met, friend.
Let's get this over with. I win!
Oh, what an amazing game! Well played!
Here's to the winner.
It's Hunterace versus Just Saiyan, all evened up now and everything to play for as these 2 players move on through their group. The Mage has a win for Hunterace. The Rogue just took the mirror match for Saiyan. So what decks have we got left, Sol, and what we're going to see in this matchup?
Well, up next, we are going to be seeing, I believe, Hunterace's Rogue against Saiyan's Shaman. Saiyan still has his Shaman and the Zoo Warlock, which is a potential question mark for me. Hunterace, on his side, has his Rogue remaining and his own Shaman, which I have had to pick a question mark out of his lineup. It's that Shaman deck. Even though he went through great length explaining why every card in that deck was perfect to us, it's still the one that gives me doubts, because all of the Shaman decks in this tournament give me doubts. Because as much as the law of averages say that when a bunch of different players turn up with a bunch of different builds of Control Shaman or Mid-Range Shaman, one of them is probably pretty good, it also dictates that most of them are probably not optimal, because everyone has built them in different ways. So just purely by process of elimination, some of these Shaman decks have to be wrong. So there will always be a question mark over their heads for me throughout this tournament.
And maybe they're all wrong. Maybe the big one. I mean,
also a possibility, yeah.
There's a lot of big Shaman being played on ladder at the moment. But let's get into this game here. As we see Hunterace's opening hand, it's going to be on the coin and does have the Evil Miscreant, which I just feel is going to be such a trademark play of Rogue going forward in this Year of the Dragon.
Speaking of trademark plays, Acidic Swampoos is fast becoming the trademark tech card of the current Hearthstone meta.
Yeah, when you start running 2 of them, you know something's going a little bit funky here. But look at this flurry of 3 drops. But Miscreant is just so good as it not only is a sticky minion to start doing funny things on the board, the lackeys fill out the combo activations for what the rest of the hand looks to be pretty poor, to be honest. Yeah, the Fox and the Burglar get some work done as and when we get there, but being able to proc those SIs just easily later on is huge. Do you think the Thief version of this deck is actually weaker versus a Shaman like this because cards like Vendetta don't quite get the high impact turns?
I suspect that just raw damage is probably a better way to go against it, than just trying to build a board, stick things, play tempo.
Weird spells.
Yeah, tempo swings, not really a huge impact. Like, maybe Vendetta will dig you out of a hole when your opponent makes like a Walking Fountain play that wouldn't be available to like the pure damage version that Saiyan is bringing. But I would suspect this is one of the matchups where you would rather just have straight up just damage to the face relentlessly with deck hands and so on.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. Maybe even just sniping a Ziliax without having to trade into it and heal a bit more could be nice, but yeah, limited options.
You have a lot of options to do that with anyway in the deck though, right?
Right.
Like backstabs, SI7s, you can roll the 2 damage lackey.
True.
Mana Cyclone.
Again, definitely not bad, just getting more stuff on the board without anything super high impact to do. The Goblin Lackey could be played here to buff one of the minions for an attack, but when you can dagger anyway, and if you're that afraid of the spell damage totem, it goes down and you have at least 1 charge of the dagger locked and loaded.
Right.
Seems a little bit better overall.
Yeah, it's mana efficiency.
And you save the 1 drop to pair with an SI7 agent next turn if that's so desired.
Right. I think Saiyan will be happy, by the way. Okay, firstly, because he just threw his
yeah,
ski.
he'll be happy now.
Not exactly on time, but early enough that it can still have an impact. But he'll be happy to be back in a matchup where he can just freely press his totems when he has nothing better to do, because we've seen him play against a couple of Sea Giant decks so far where those totems are really just purely detrimental to his game plan. But now at least he can pick up those clutch taunts in some spots or just threaten spell damage, because that's really what it is. It's an implied threat. It's a little teasing taunt to your opponent, just saying, go on, do you want to kill it? You want to kill it? You want to waste some damage into my 0-2?
Yeah, and sometimes they don't have a clean 2 damage to do either, so it can get a little bit out of hand. Well.
Yikes. Can we re-roll?
Nope, you Instincts for the second Fox.
4 mana, draw a 3/6. I'm not really feeling it.
There's a Vendetta,
Sorry,
though.
was that a fox noise? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
What does the Fox say? So,
I actually have foxes very near, like, that you can hear in the middle of the night outside and keep me awake at night sometimes. That's not true, because I wasn't going to sleep anyway, but I am awake at night and can therefore hear foxes.
Don't blame your sleeping on a fox,
They sound awful. They are the stuff of nightmares.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Precision. Perfection.
Ziliax, though, not the stuff of nightmare, something quite fantastic when you're the one playing it. It's a very clean kill on the Burglar, and now just going to kind of the Cyclone will clean it off. But still, getting some nice heal and delay. And more importantly, you start looking at Hagatha, then Hagatha's Scheme. There's just so much removal and Earth Shock for a big Van Cleef. This might be an uphill climb for Hunterace already, and I know I may be saying this early, but I feel like Saiyan's draws just keep getting as good as they are in hand right now.
Right. And I think definitely when you build these Shamans, this is really one of the matchups that you're kind of aiming it at. When you say right now a lot of people are playing the big Shaman on ladder, I think that's a fantastic deck in a lot of matchups. I think it kind of rolls over when rogues come up against it, because they just don't have many of those, or as many of those fantastic anti-aggro tools as this deck does. These kind of builds of Control Shaman and Mid-Range Shaman, I think a lot of the players have built them with the idea of banning Warrior, leaving up Rogue, and really searching for a deck that can consistently stop what Rogue has to offer. And I really do think that this Shaman is one of the best ones at doing it, the way Saiyan has built it.
Yeah, and even now this draw of Lightning Storm, as I said, I feel like kind of just all Saiyan's draws are good, you know, to go back on your point. But this Lightning Storm, as well as proccing the Liquor, means that this is a pretty common play. I would say you might end up leaving the Miscreant up or the SI, depending on choice, but that is still good enough, considering then you have, yes, you're overloaded next turn, you probably don't want to play Hagatha's Scheme regardless, and then you can go into Hagatha the Witch, and then have the scheme as a final backup for late game, already just mowing down these waves upon waves of minions.
Gets the news that it is Noble Sack. The Paladin Secret was actually always pretty likely to disrupt that because Redemption would have done it, Auto Defense Matrix would have done it, and the name of the new +2 health thing would have been pretty nightmarish in a certain spot if that had come out.
I think though, even with that, Saiyan came off pretty well because he did clear off the SI with the Lightning Storm, so pretty good there. It could have been a lot worse and more damage getting pushed.
Sludge Slurper, one of the big disagreements between the deck that we see Saiyan playing right now and the deck that Hunterace has built instead. Hunterace actually is not playing Sludge Slurper, which I think makes him fairly unique, honestly, in terms of like the mid-rangey Shaman builds.
What do you make of scheme there? Do you think Saiyan could have been a little bit braver because of Hagatha the Witch the following turn? Because now his next turn, yes, he has Archmage and he does have that Sludge Slurper, but it just feels a lot weaker for the trade-off of some health. But because Saiyan runs double Witch's Brew and he would have gained 5 armor from Hagatha, I feel like that was a reasonable trade-off.
I actually like what he did because he has Hagatha on the following turn, but he doesn't have healing. So he wants freedom to play Hagatha on the following turn without being under any health total pressure. Like, yes, even if his Hagatha clears off that board, but in the meantime he's been pushed down to 10 health or something. His Hagatha then pulls him back up to 15. Well, he's still being threatened with then Leroy and bounce lethals from that point. So he wants to secure his health total by clearing early, and now he has freedom to spend 8 mana on Hagatha and hope that this can carry the game from here.
Right, and when you start to look at how this hand is actually shaping up for Saiyan, he has Ooze for emergency removal if there is a pick that comes out and start to pressure a lot of damage. If not, he has Thunderhead, Sludge Slurper as a combo, which will, 1, gain him 2 spells because of Hagatha, 2, create some nice interaction between Thunderhead and start pressuring and peeling off some minions himself. So Saiyan, I feel, has found himself in a very, very nice situation.
Hunterace created that kind of awkward in-between situation where it's kind of testing for your opponent's ooze, just saying, hey, you want to ooze this? But Hunterace, having now picked up the second, is very free to ooze this if he wants to.
And it just keeps getting better, I feel, for Saiyan.
Forked Lightning with the Thunderhead in play is kind of nonsense.
That was fantastic, but also Rain of Toads. Being able to get next turn is also pretty great too, so this just keeps going from
That's a game
from worse to worse for Hunterace.
That is a game-winning turn for Saiyan. All right. If you didn't have it wrapped up enough already.
Like I said, I think the Rain of Toads, although not as flashy and as clean as this, I think the Rain of Toads was just good enough.
Well, he has Vargoth Feral Spirit next turn now.
Yep. Whatever.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
If the Thunderhead...
You could wait a turn and have Vargoth, Rain of Toads.
Yeah. If the Thunderhead is still in play, that's going to mess with him potentially, overloading for support space with the Spark Summoning. But if the Thunderhead is still in play when the turn passes back to him, it probably doesn't really matter what cards he has in his hand at that point, right?
And again, you start to just see the slight differences in the way the builds work in certain matchups. Of Hunterace's build is just a little bit slower, a little bit more slower, and then just provides a little bit less pressure. I will say the scheme into Hagatha ended up working very, very nicely.
Yeah, I think it's, you can see now what the intention was, right? When you see it after the fact, it's very, very clear that he just wanted that little bit of time. And speaking of signaling intentions, I like what Hunterace is doing here as well. It's not going to work. It's one of those situations where you have to extol the virtues of the losing play, because on average, Hunterace is playing to his out. He's not playing any minions because he doesn't want Saiyan to be able to heal. If he plays minions, Saiyan can rush fountains at him in the near future, and then he has no way of winning. By there, just setting up the Waggle Pick after he's seen an ooze, he's setting himself on a Leroy top deck to be able to threaten lethal himself. It turns out that Saiyan's entire hand is full of cards that shut down that option, and the Walking Fountain that Hunterace is trying to play around is not there, but there was no other out that Hunterace could play to.
He has to do something, right? That's the key point. And also, again, it's like, well, if I equip the pick and then he answers it again, what's the problem? Well, if you never equip it, just Saiyan's just -1 card from your deck, and hand, most importantly. And also, I believe, is that Burglar 2 or 1 now? I think it's 1, right?
1. Okay. Yes, I think it's 1.
Because these are the moments where this deck can get a little bit funky because you can end up just getting...
No, he got the Noble Sack.
Oh, of course, you're right, you're right. So those are the moments where it can get a little bit wild because he can just get some very random cards, basically, that can really mess up the game. But wasn't to be with just a rock biter weapon as the best choice that Hunterace got with. I don't even know what he does. Like, I don't think he could really win the game with the resources he has right now if there were no minions on the board.
Right.
And it was just Saiyan's blank board and his hand.
Yeah. Like,
Never mind a board full of minions.
Like, while you were talking, I was trying to live in, like, Trollden world, right? Where there's some other way of... Like, he blink foxes into Wind Fury and then goes like Leroy Wind Fury Rockbiter or some nonsense like that. But like, that's just still nowhere near good enough with what he's facing down.
We need the one that gives him Quad Wind Fury or Mega Wind Fury for the technical term.
Sure.
And for Leroy to be immune.
Yes.
Trade through minions. We're just making stuff up.
Hunterace just looking miserable right now at just how good Saiyan's plays continue to be for him. Mojo Master Z. Yup. Can't Leroy Shadow Step me on 6 mana, idiot.
Just to confirm, that is not a quote from Saiyan before Sol gets people in trouble. That is a quote directly from Sol himself, and it's something he would definitely say on ladder. But most importantly, a smile from Hunterace. He knows it. Even his, smallest of small outs now pretty much just doesn't exist.
Yeah. And this is a key point. If, like, Mojo Master Z, he's kind of out of the metagame right now, but if it comes back in, this is the key point to know about it. It doesn't matter who's the control deck and who's the aggro deck, it matters who's in control.
Yes.
Zihi favors the player who is ahead in the game. And in that case, even though Saiyan has the bigger, greedier, more expensive deck, because he's so far ahead, Mojo Master Zihi is just an absolute lockout.
Yeah, it's in that instance, it becomes very similar to Lotheb of the old days.
Yes.
In that, well, yeah, a lot of the time Lotheb might stop you dying, but most of the time it makes you win because you just push on the extra damage you already have left. But Saiyan goes 2-1 up. And honestly, one of the most exciting matchups just in terms of player's name versus player's name for me, Hunterace just Saiyan. And we'll see which ones are going to take it very, very soon. I'm pretty hyped for this one, but it's all going to come down to this zoo.
It is. And there's one important facet of this matchup that I haven't mentioned yet, which is that this is my pick for the tournament, just saying, versus Brian Kibler's pick for the tournament, Hunterace. And the reason I have yet to get cocky about this and the fact that we are currently winning is that it comes down to Zoo, which is a deck that I have zero faith in. The reason why I felt comfortable going with Saiyan, first, I have endless respect for him as a player, and I think that's shone through in how well he's played in this series so far, as well as to get to this point, as well as a 33-game winning streak in HCT. Like, I could fill the rest of this gap just with great things about Saiyan. But he has a Zoo deck, which I think is built well. I don't think it's perfect. I'd like to see more Leroys and Soulfires in there, personally, for my taste. But the Microtech controller Sea Giant alongside one Soulfire is a far better way to go about it as a late-game package to me than He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Okay. I agree.
Yes.
I'm just going to agree because one, I actually do genuinely, but two, if I didn't, I think Sol would just wring my neck right now. But we're going to go into the game now, and Zoo is going to be up against this Shaman deck, and Hunterace is bringing a classified control Shaman list, but he does have some stuff to do a little bit early. There's Wild Pyromancers, for example, and Ancestral Healings, and I love the Ancestral Healings in this deck. I think the card is very, very good. Because Hunterace told me so.
Elucidate.
Well, for a start, if Sol just laughs at me for no reason, I'll do the analysis and the hosting, Sol. It's fine. So Ancestral Healing, one, most importantly, is 0 cost, which means you can whip it into any given turn possible. And with Wild Pyromancers, and at least for me, most importantly, Twilight Drakes, you can end up putting a huge wall even as early as turn 3 or 4 against a deck like Zoo, which currently isn't really running Silence.
Okay, so the reason I wanted you to continue is that I'm a nice guy and I didn't just want to jump on you for your opinions without hearing you out first. And
what's changed from all the other days we've known each other, Sol?
I've always been a great guy, don't listen to him. So through further explanation, I think you're right. I think Ancestral Healing is a very good card with Walking Fountain, with Twilight Drake, etc. What I'm still skeptical on, despite how fantastic Hunterace told us it was for 15 minutes, is this Wild Pyromancer package. So when you said that you like the Ancestral Healing, I thought you were talking about it as part of the Pyro package, which I don't like, because I don't think there's enough stuff in there for the Pyro to really be effective. But just as a standalone card in the deck, I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, and most importantly with the Wild Pyro in this matchup, because one wave normally does it.
I wonder.
Because of the 1 health.
Yeah.
It's just an extra spell for Pyro, specifically.
Yeah. But, you know, there's no Lightning Bolts in this deck. There's no Voltaic Burst. There's no Totemic Smash.
Yep.
There's no cheap 1-mana spells apart from the single copy of Earthshock to go along with that Pyro and Ancestral Healing. And I'd argue that most of the time you're going to need to do at least 2 AoE damage to a Zoo board to be effective.
Witch's Brew, though.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Well, you want to just Pyro, Witch's Brew, the Pyro, Witch's Brew, the Pyro, Witch's Brew, the Pyro, Witch... Okay, yeah.
It's just like Hagatha's Scheme if you don't really think about it.
Sure. Pyro Lightning Storm is a very effective combination, though. That's kind of a bootleg Hagatha's Scheme.
As is every form of AoE that will ever be in the game now.
Yep.
A small note, as we're going to just continue this back and forth about Pyro. I'm just randomly defending it. I'm not really, too opinionated on it. But it is a 2-drop, which is a 3/2 to play on 2 sometimes, which can help.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's the game doesn't have 2-drops anymore, Sol.
That's fair.
So, hot take right there.
Looking at 4 of them on the screen right now, just in Saiyan's hand and board.
Outside of Zoo.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yikes.
Hunterace, Farsights, just like me. I taught him well.
Yeah, that is bad news if you are Team Saiyan.
There just isn't much that beats a 5-mana Walking Fountain, is there, if you're an aggro deck?
Not a lot, no.
Double Evil Genius, though, is going to be pretty good going forward because we just continue. I know we talk about it a lot, viewers. I'm sorry, but lackeys are really good. And getting 4 of them is going to be pretty good, too. It's kind of like Life Tap, but better, right? You pay 2 mana to get a 2/2, and you draw 2 1/1s.
I wonder.
Yeah. Bootleg Life Tap?
Bootleg Life Tap, yeah, all right.
We got that. That was a hard sell.
You just had to put it in my language.
I should have gone for condescending there.
Oh, that was pretty funny. Good job.
Okay, so not utilizing the coin just yet for want of just putting an extra 1-drop on the board. Didn't really deem it necessary, and the coin's still definitely going to get a lot of use. As I said, Saiyan can create an additional 4 1-drops almost on demand in this game.
Yeah, and this game is looking grim.
I wonder.
For the Saiyan camp. Mind Control tech here really has 0 bad outcomes. They're all perfectly reasonable. He then curves that into that 5-mana Walking Fountain we've been talking about. Hunterace just has to consider a world where if he ever gets punished for that. Like, is there a play that Saiyan makes where he can't just curve Mind Control tech into Walking Fountain here?
No. There's my hand 6. I'm pretty sure it's right. I actually think that Hunterace was far enough ahead that if he really wanted to be silly, he could have just played the Twilight Drake and still been fine. Because this fountain is so stupid at how much healing it can get on turn 5.
Sure.
It's powerful when you play it in the Muck Morpher deck, when it's just a 4/4.
Right.
Never mind when it's just a true 4/8 with Lifesteal and Rush and Wind Fury.
I was going to say, so I think the scariest thing Saiyan can do here is like Evil Genius, Grim Rally kind of combination. Or just 1-drop Grim Rally, I guess.
Yeah, just to make it as
anything
big as
along those
possible.
lines. Something that involves adding more tokens to the board and Grim Rally.
But then it's Wild Pyromancer and Lightning Storm's time to shine.
Exactly, yeah. And I think Hunterace has both bases covered. If Saiyan just continues to be fairly narrow on the board, then Walking Fountain will shut him down. If there is that Evil Genius Grim Rally combination to get those 1/1 tokens buffed up inside the egg, then Pyro and Lightning Storm is just going to make a huge mess of that board state as well.
Yeah, and a lot of the time in these heavy control versus aggro matchups, as the aggro deck, you want your opponent to not be able to take at least one of the 2 boxes of AoE or healing or sustain, depending on what, whether it's healing or not.
Right.
The problem is, there is true AoE for Wild Pyromancer, Lightning Storm, as we've talked about, but also the Walking Fountain kind of ticks them both by itself.
Yeah.
Because it normally kills 2 minions, which is kind of AoE, and heals for 8.
Right.
So you do both just with that, and then there's a taunt to back it up, and then there's whatever he draws in the next 2 or 3 turns while he's doing all that.
Did this Evil Genius belong on the other side of the Direwolf Alpha? Small questions. Certainly not sure of it myself.
I'm going to go with probably.
I'm going to say with it never matters because the Direwolf Alpha is dead on board, so
Misclicks happen, Sol.
Yeah,
Misclicks happen. But now you see the wonder of the walking fountain. Saiyan just looks up and looks away as he's like, well, you don't beat that.
Yeah.
And it's just true.
Yeah. It's one of the most torturous things about being a Hearthstone caster. Saiyan of 25 seconds ago was a happy man with hopes and dreams. He was developing a board. He was hoping that there was a Pyromancer stuck in Hunterace's hand with very few spells to activate it. He was going to continue to tempo out and everything would be rosy, and he would be getting out of groups. Saiyan of 25 seconds later saw a 5-mana walking fountain just trample over his hopes and dreams.
Yeah, at least Saiyan of 25 seconds later does not also see Hunterace's hand. Because that would only go from bad to worse. And already, especially in this matchup, you see the power of Ancestral Healing even on a mind control tech after that trade, right? Like, it's kind of insane. Even just to heal that up and taunt it would be a big problem here. Obviously, the Walking Fountain a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
My point is, it's a very flexible card against aggro.
Okay.
There is a Magic Carpet, though.
Yeah, I think Saiyan will be counting his blessings at least that the Ancestral Healing didn't come down in conjunction with this enormous Walking Fountain turn, because it is now relatively straightforward for him to deal with it. It is going to be the full Reno for Hunterace as he goes back up to full, but there's not really a lot that Saiyan can do about that. He's just got to suck it up and start again.
If there was Ancestral Healing, I think it almost could have been a concede from Saiyan, because it's so much removal after that. But we'll see what happens here. No surprise that the Flying Carpet has come down, and you look at the sheer power of the stacking, just rush and plus attacks. It's kind of absurd. Especially because with this Argent Squire, he actually reduces the healing down, so he does not go up to full whilst removing this minion.
That's true.
Saving 4's a big number, actually.
That's just fair point. I called it the full Reno, forgot to account for the Divine Shield. Oh, one card off. This is what I talked about earlier, though, where these two decks aren't just going to kind of grind back and forth to see if one of them runs out of resources, because Hunterace has already drawn that Shudderwock, and with the plus health buff that he's now getting, with the Giggling Inventor battle cry that he's now getting, like, that Shudderwock is going to be game-ending if it's able to come down.
It really is, isn't it? Mind control tech as well.
Yep.
Little proc.
Yep.
Big deal here, though, is that there is just a gap, I'll say. And the gap looks like just about a Flying Carpet could fit through it, because that's the one minion that's really giving Hunterace some trouble now. I'm not saying he's just going to lose because of it, but it's the scary one. And I've found myself time and time again in games I've watched and games I've played that have involved Zoo, is if there's one thing that will randomly lose you the game, it's leaving a Flying Carpet up. And we might get to see some fireworks fly right now.
Might indeed. I think, again, you do have to blinker your vision if you really want to live in the land of hope, though, because, yes, Knife Juggler and Evil Genius and Rushing Lackeys and other small minions can really take care of this board state, but Hunterace just bats his eyelashes and just answers right back with the Lightning Storm turn, and it's really all for naught as far as Saiyan's concerned.
It is. I've not got much else for you. It's as good as it's going to get, though, to be completely honest. Ooh. So for me, big choice between the fairly steady Fiendish Circle there, or just the heroic Bane of Doom to create Doomguard back from the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bane of Doom has lost a lot of impact from the days of yore, where the demon pool was a lot more limited and the high rolls were a lot more frequent because of that.
You just hope they forgot to code it in, because no one's played Bane of Doom for a long time, and they're like, yep, Doomguard's still in the pool, let's go!
I know we talked about the World Championship Tavern Brawl, and that's one of the funny things, is that the RNG effects still have the full pool. So if it's like summon a random 2-drop, it could be any random 2-drop. Like Piloted Shredder is dropping 2-drops from the new expansion, which is kind of funny. It's like, well, this didn't happen in Worlds.
You're breaking the timeline.
Yeah.
That never ends well. Funnily enough, Although you'd say Giggling Inventor is built against aggro matchups, Zoo's probably the best aggro deck to beat it because of a card like Flying Carpet and the abundant...
And Knife Juggler as well.
Yeah, Knife Juggler, and just the fact that they run an abundance of small, tiny tokens. So
and it plays into your Sea Giants as well.
Yeah, so asking for multiple hits into these minions is normally a pain. But
the package!
I'm going to start calling this FedEx Zoo.
Nice.
Oh, good old written out. Oh, there's a World Championship card if I ever saw one. Or at least an old school card. River Croc.
Yeah. Now, Firebat had some pretty bad cards in his World Championship Hunter, but River Croc was not in there, I don't believe.
If only. Was a legitimate Hunter card, though, for a long time.
Was. River Croc into Coin Houndmaster. Just deleted.
Oh.
Just deleted people. They just died.
So many, but almost out of time.
Slight, just a small issue to note as well. Well, one, there's the good old for the second time today, the 1-mana Sea Giant with Rush.
If this ends up being as relevant as the last rushing Sea Giant we saw, then it's going to be a game-winning play for Saiyan.
There's a window.
There is.
Because if Hunterace has to Lightning Storm, he cannot Shudder Walk the turn after.
Very true.
Which is a huge, huge problem.
Very
but
true.
I don't know if he can't Lightning Storm this turn.
Storm and Ziliax.
He has to do both, right? I was thinking if there's a way you can get away with just Ziliax.
Yeah, is there a play that lets him Shudder Walk next turn?
You would have to Ziliax the Juggler so that the Ziliax doesn't get juggled and has to be traded into for an extra 3 health.
Right.
So say he does that. There's what?
Goes
3,
to 20,
5,
then
7,
he goes to 23
16,
again as something trades
16
into him.
on board and Saiyan.
1 Soulfire.
Yeah, I was just checking, and no Leroy, most importantly. So it's literally a Soulfire and Direwolf.
Abusive Sergeant.
Yeah, 2 Abusive Sergeants,
Grim
2
Rally.
Direwolves, Grim Rally. Oh, there's a lot.
But there's none of them in his hand right now, so it would be Runner off the life tab that he'd need to pick up.
Wait, what can he transform into with the Lackey?
Oh, great point, actually.
I mean, so there's 3 into 4, 2 into 3, 1 into 2.
So Korkron Elite off the 4 spot. His Magic Carpet can become Korkron.
I think he... I don't know if he can play Lightning Storm.
It's such a hard turn.
It is, that's what I'm saying. Ancestral Healing on the Acolyte.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I like that.
Is it going to happen, though?
Oh, surely.
I think he wants to save Ancestral Healing for the Shudder Walk. There's the Direwolf. So now the rushing Witchy Lackey can, on its own, deal with the Ziliax.
My worry is, did he need it for the Shudder Walk? Did he need it for the Shudder Walk, though? It makes 2 Annoyatrons.
Grim Rally. There's the Grim Rally!
Quick Soul, do
Grim
maths.
Rally and Abusive.
Okay, that has to be
Direwolf,
enough.
Grim Rally, Abusive has to get there,
It has
surely.
to. I'm not even going to count that one. Wait, does he need to? He doesn't need to play Mechary, right?
He wants a rushing 1-drop to make his trade.
Okay, sure, because he's going to Grim Rally the Abusive.
He can do it this way, Direwolf and then Grim Rally the remaining bit of the Mecharoo and then Abusive afterwards
Sure,
if he even needs it. Yep.
Whichever way, don't know about you, but that looks like a large amount of damage, Sottle.
12, 16,
Yeah,
19,
that's it.
21.
Easy. Whew! And Saiyan takes the win over Hunterace. An extremely close matchup overall, but Saiyan taking that game, we were saying that it looked pretty grim because Hunterace had so much removal.
Yeah.
And again, I have to ask the question, it's easy for me to say Sattelpeon not on that stage, but did he really need to save that taunt, the Ancestral Healing, when he could have done it on the Acolyte? Drawn more cards to help him out with, and also just soaked more damage, because if you survive, then Shudderwock make it Mind Control Tex makes 2 Annoyatrons and a few other things I can't remember now.
Other
doesn't matter.
not relevant things,
but to me, combined with the Acolyte taunted, that just should be enough, right?
So I think in the world in which we reside, it didn't matter because there was so much damage overkill that he would have killed the 1-3 taunt as well, but it would potentially played around more outs. But we will get back to that in due course because there's plenty more to unpack, but it does mean that Just Saying, my pick for the tournament, has progressed as the group winner in Group C, and this is the group that had that most cliche of titles, the Group of Death, and I don't like giving anything that tag because I consider it somewhat disrespectful to the other 12 players in the tournament.
It's the Tournament of Death.
It's the World Championship. If every group isn't the Group of Death, then we've done something wrong for the past 12 months. That's the standard of player that we have here, but certainly Hunterace and Just Saying do have an argument to be the best players of their respective region. You throw Ike in there, who has a great reputation and a lot of fan following behind him as well, and it certainly was an incredible group to be pushed out of, but yes, much debate still to be had about the ending turns of that game, but also in terms of Hunterace's deck building as well, because if you draw a Wild Pyromancer against Zoo, and it
doesn't get played,
it's still in your hand at the end of the game, you have to ask questions about whether it has enough support in the deck to be worth running.
Yeah, there was even, for example, that turn instead going using Pyro, Lightning Storm, Ancestral Healing on the Pyro if he needed it. I can't remember the exact health totals, I'm sorry. But just a note, are both of our picks group winners?
Well, mine is. Is yours?
Bunny Hopper won his group? Good job. Okay, we're continuing to do some very successful things, at least in the caster pick. But again, congratulations to Just Saying. That was an insane match, and I think it's just going to continue on if the rest of the matches that have already happened today have anything to do with it. So congratulations to him. Hunterace is not out by any means, though. There's plenty more Hearthstone coming up. It's been a blast so far, and there's more to come.